another minute or so for the audience to fill up, and then we can start. All right, let's start. Good evening and good morning, Unicorn fam. Welcome to the Crypto Unicorns Town Hall number 46 with Aron Beierschmitt, Crypto Unicorn CEO and co-founder. For now, we have some quality time with Aron. This is twice in a row. Pretty good. He's always ready to spill the tea and spread the hype with Aron's updates. Do you have any updates for us today, Aron, before we move forward to the questions?
I do, Sparkly. Thank you as always for the wonderful intro. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone here. We have a major update 2.4 rolling out the door today. This is kind of our first major step with respect to the core game in terms of transitioning from a farm sim to a build battle game. By introducing Shadowcorn Attack, we've made Unicorn stats matter in both farming and gathering. Obviously, the stronger the corns you have, the higher a chance of success. 100% will be possible with some of the strongest corns today. In addition to that, all quests will now be stat oriented. We've taken the opportunity with this to actually make unicorns that aren't particularly good at jousting and effectively kind of give them some buffs in these quest loops just to try to even it out a little bit, given both really jousting and questing are the only RBW sources outside of the RMP today. Taking a step back, this new emphasis on stats is really what's preparing us for the introduction of gems. This is, of course, a way for players to directly increase their corn stats, allowing them to be more successful at farming, gathering, questing, twilight tactics, and ultimately down the road, tribe v tribe PvP. Keep in mind that with the introduction of gems and twilight tactics, we have our first unicorn burn mechanism. And this finally gives us a really big lever to kind of counterbalance unicorn asset inflation by directly tying it to the improvement and progression of your best corn. So I know everybody's super pumped to sacrifice a bunch of donkeys for soul power to power up those gems. Two other quick things, or I guess three. Based on community feedback, we've also lowered the crafting time for boosters. So those looking to progress their bloodlines can do so quicker. And also based on community feedback, today we are increasing mythic utility in farming, jousting, and for gathering, it will be for double mythics and above. But we are increasing mythic utility across those systems. Lastly, the jousting changes, which have been much discussed amongst the community in the lead up to this. More than happy to chat and answer questions on them. But two kind of key points, I think, just generally a statement on why we're experimenting with 2-day jousting per week. One, trying to maximize the social experience of jousting while minimizing the opportunities for players to exploit. We certainly observed a lot of behavior given the low level of player liquidity to date that players can, across multiple accounts, enter a bunch of corns right into the same joust tournaments. So by heavily increasing the rewards on those 2 days, we're hoping to incentivize a level of liquidity that drives participation in jousting in a way that ultimately doesn't upset our economy, as we've seen in the past when we've just opened up rewards 24/7, 365. I think this has been mentioned time and time again, but we are going to be planning stream sessions during these tournaments and really hoping to make it a more fun experience as you start to learn, oh, I know who I'm jousting against. And so I am excited to see how that goes down. I hope people tuning in today will tune in to those streams. Lastly, like I know we've been asked why many times around this feature, why try this now or this change? With gyms and crafting, gym crafting specifically coming out, and a ton of new crafting and tribe items with it. This is with the next release tribes. We plan to use jousting as the main source for some of these items. It's possible that if the weekend tournament structure works, we can keep those tournaments for Friday, Saturday, and reintroduce weekday jousting tournaments that is less RBW focused and more of a grind for codex, pages, gym and tribe materials, things of that nature. So, we always kind of think in multiple stages and look out ahead. Oftentimes, I think we get judged by directly what's in front of players' faces. And so it's certainly on us to make sure everybody understands the full arc of where we're going, where we're headed. But generally, I would certainly ask for a little bit more of the benefit of doubt when we make these changes. I've seen a pattern time and time again over the last 2+ years of being in this space, where there's a certain reaction to a change, we make a change, and at the end of the day, we tweak as needed. So generally, I'm excited to see this go out today. Let's see how it works. Go from there. All right, Sparkly, I'm ready for any and all questions. I certainly hope we get some tough ones.
Yeah, I did notice from the discussion yesterday that a lot of people from the Serious channel wanted to ask a lot of questions. Well, chat, here is your chance. We have this town hall specifically for that, so I really hope you take advantage of that and come up on stage and ask the questions that you want. If your camera or your if your microphone is not available, you can also head on to the feedback channel and you can check the town hall number 46 questions thread right there. We also have anonymous questions in case you don't want your name to be attached to the question. What I'm really getting at here is that there were a lot of important questions there, and sometimes these questions have a lot of nuance and can be better explained through voice. So this is your chance, this is your opportunity. We have shared this event for the last couple of days. I really hope you take the chance to ask a question here. So far, we have one anonymous question, and that question is, when can we play Mob Run?
Yeah, that question can be answered by looking at the forum and what was put forward in TeamSurf's proposal. But I'll answer it. November. November is when both Bumpercorns and Mob Run will have their Apple App Store and Google Play submissions. These are effectively soft launches on the mobile platforms in the mobile stores. We're going to be determining whether or not we get blocked for having the crypto piece. We're going to have a little switch in there that allows us to kind of turn it off and at least run the free rooms, things of that nature. Just through the sequence of launches that is now on the TeamSurf's plate per the past proposal. Following the soft launch of Bumpercorns and Mob Run into the Apple and Google stores, we'll have the launch of unicornparty.com in December, which is the web version coupled with both the Apple App Store submission and the Android sideload submission. Keep in mind that Google Play does not allow real money skill-based games to date, so we'll have to always sideload for unicornparty.com. But with Apple, ironically enough, they do allow real money skill-based games. So we'll be able to run that submission. So in December, you're getting the unicornparty.com launch. That starts with Unicorn Bingo. Then in January, you have Bumpercorns relaunch into unicornparty.com, which includes all the hard currency hookup. Then February is Mob Run relaunch under unicornparty.com. And then in March, you're looking at Unicorn Solitaire. And in Q2 2024, there will be 2 more game launches. TeamSurf will be pulling our community internally here in the future to try to determine what those final 2 committed game launches are. The current three concepts are 21, which is a skill-based spin on blackjack, pool, obviously, and trivia. So there's the unicornparty.com update and an answer to that first question, Sparkly.
All right, thank you so much for that anonymous question. Next up, we have questions from the thread. Please don't hesitate to ask anonymous question if you'd like to. We do have 4 slots left for anonymous questions, so just go ahead and ask. In the meantime, let's get ourselves a question from the community. Hold on. All right, there we go. So we have a question from Bahes. Seeing as we now introduce a lot of complex stat requirements, how are we planning to refine the filters, and when will the new greatly improved filters be implemented? With Haku shutting down, we no longer have a way to filter our corns. Will you agree it's a little crazy shifting the meta to something the game UI and UX does not support?
With the ship of 2.4 today, quest boards will finally not respect land. So if you're sitting on a common plot of land or whatever, today it's filtering your candy corns, assuming it's a candy common plot, above and beyond higher stat, more relevant corns. So that gets fixed today. I'd love to hear a more specific proposal around what stats you would, or how you would want to filter. Personally, I look, and it's very simple, Bajas. I look at one of the stats requirements. I then filter by that one. I put 2 corns in. If there's 4 total, I then filter by one of the other stats that's less fulfilled in the little progress bar that we give you inside of our UI today. And then I filter for those. Boom, 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 done. So if you have a very specific suggestion somewhere, I'd love to see it. But I do think the improvement where it's no longer filtering class-based corns above those with the relevant stats is a great step forward in improving that. And no, I don't believe the UI is so bad that it's silly to push a change like that now with the update to land filtering, land class filtering not being respected, specific to quest boards.
All right, there's your answer, Bahes. Time Traveler seems to be chiming in with his question. So
Great.
regarding uh, the filtering using the highest stats will result in players having to scroll through hundreds of corns that are already out of energy to select a highest stat corn below them just to plant a scene to
Spend the
form.
energy, Time Traveler. I'm not arguing this with you at all. I'm not arguing this with you at all. Spend the energy or don't. If you do not have enough berries to fulfill the energy on your own corns at the level you are within this game, sir, I don't have an answer for you. But
Oh,
that one's a little ridiculous to me. Like, just refill the energy on the highest stat corn.
all right. Okay. Then we also have a question from Dijkstra's Revenge. This is a little longer. Hey, a bit of a long question, but couldn't keep it shorter. There have been discussions of offering an easier farm sim playtime and various boosts for a hefty cost. Pay RBW to plant all, decrease, or eliminate crafting breeding costs. This way, whales that want to come in and spend inefficiently for the purpose of getting clout without grinding can do so and boost the economy in the process, just like they can now do in Shadowforge. At the moment, if an ETH ICO OG wants to come in and spend 200 ETH to have the highest stats, the coins get stuck on waiting times and can't spend. It is a missed opportunity to add money to the economy by high-value non-extractive players. Are there any plans to introduce mechanisms for enabling high-value players to spend big in the farm sim? If not, what are the plans to having money coming into the farm sim economy to counter the extractors?
I'm struggling to understand what the root of the question really is here. Is it a desire to simply not be farming anymore? Then we just need to kill LOD1 completely and just move to this full automation environment that everybody wants or seems to want. But the thing that we're struggling with right now is we just have a bunch of OGs who are very tired of a loop that they've been playing for a very long time at this point. So it's hard to argue with some of the frustrations that players have, despite the fact that we've been drastically improving the experience since the very beginning. So there is this limit to where I'm like, all right, well, new players coming in, anyone complaining about them churning out or not enjoying the game or not being able to progress is just not validated in data at all, because our week over week retention is higher in Q3 than it was even in Q1 of this year. And in Q1, it was higher than it was, even after we got through our launch issues. So it's just hard for me to kind of look at that and go, all right, or see the complaints and go, okay, we need to really make a change here. DR, in some ways, a lot of the complaints that we're having today are counters to extraction. This idea that it doesn't make a lot of sense to sell certain things into the RMP, it's kind of like, well, obviously we've hit a floor where it doesn't make sense to try to profit off of that base layer loop, right? One of the things that I regret deeply is not making stats matter by default from the beginning, because we created a situation where we have all these babies that players were not incentivized to evolve. And that's always bothered me because, there's less unim, I think, even today than is needed. There is less circulating supply of unicorn milk today than is needed to actually evolve all of those babies, right? So we created this situation where we probably allowed people to quote unquote extract far too early within progression, or kind of get to a point where you just needed a shitload of babies. You didn't care about the stats or quality of those babies, and you just kind of built out your 16 lands as quickly as you possibly could. So, generally, we're making moves today to counter extraction. There's a small group of people who are monopolizing the RBW source out of jousting. I know players are upset with this change. Let's see how it works when we can drive concentrated liquidity over a couple of days. It'll just be a lot harder for a player to manipulate that system, assuming we get enough liquidity on top of it. So that's another thing that we're doing to counter, extractors. I would also say, that the gem works and unicorn burn is another reason, because I get, there wasn't a reason to focus on stats in the beginning. So I'm not sitting here and blaming anybody that didn't choose to put the time and the work and the effort and the expense into those systems and into getting, high stat corns. But it created an imbalance in our overall economy, and we've inflated the number of unicorns relative to the growth of daily active wallets to a pretty extreme level. And that leads to one thing on the floor price side. I think if you hear any frustration in my voice, I'm very kind of tired of the community. Oftentimes brings forward suggestions or feedback, whether it's nice feedback or critical or harsh or trolling, it doesn't matter. It's usually very focused on a specific system or subsystem. I see very few people who are really willing to look at the overall macro and go, here's a suggestion that I think tweaks and balances this over time. Or you ignore existing systems that we've already put in place that naturally help balance things. And I see a lot of people who are just frustrated because the ability you've had to earn inside of this game has just gotten reduced and reduced and reduced. And the reality is that that is the only path we can take in this very low growth environment. So at this point, I'm rambling. Is there follow-ups to that question?
Not seeing any follow-ups right now. And looking at our thread, that seems to be the questions that we have for right now. So let me just go ahead and take a look at the questions in serious. This an aside, but Rise B mentioned a poker partnership would be great, AF. I know that we already had a poker partnership with the Central Land, their ice poker, but how do you feel about another one? Or is this going to be covered by Surf Labs?
There's nothing to my knowledge planned around that front. Obviously, poker, legitimate poker, would require a casino license.
True.
So, the 21 game that I mentioned is a spin. It is not blackjack as you would play it in a casino. It is a spin on that game type that makes it skill based. You're effectively looking at a couple of options when a card is drawn. You kind of get the option to place it. You can look this up. I think it's called 21. It's literally called 21, I think, in the Apple App Store. And it's been reasonably successful. I think it would be a better version than Trivia, but my personal favorite in that set of kind of final games to be delivered to the unicornparty.com portal in Q2 of next year. My personal favorites are Pool and kind of 21 out of the three that they've selected. So when they come for kind of feedback from the community, definitely get your kind of thoughts and opinions over to them at that point.
All right. So I am in contact with Super is the Surf, and he has told me that he'll be coming over to ask whenever he needs community feedback. So be on the lookout for that, chat. Okay, let's do another question. Oh, we have an anonymous question. Will jousting stats be balanced in this patch, like how you mentioned the other day, where total stats matter more than the individual? Because right now, intelligence and power are all that matters, so Starcorn shit on everything.
I mean, that's not necessarily true if you look at all of the data, but no, so we're not making any changes to the algorithm. That is a separate argument and discussion. That's why I said today, with the launch of the Shadowcorn Attack quests, all quests will be Shadowcorn Attack quests going forward. They favor some of the classes that are not as good in jousting. The specific comment around Starcorns is not validated in the data that we have, though. I've been kicking ass with the Cloudcorn still. Crystals, not so much. Moon, not so much. Candy, not so much. Those classes will get favored in the quest retune that's launching today. So that's the intent, to balance that for now. We are still open to making the final change to the jousting algorithm that just makes all stats matter. Required more engineering work, so we're focused on the shift to the weekends coupled with the reward changes and the quest changes as a first step there, and then we'll continue to evaluate the jousting algorithm change. I think I want to see more than 100-something accounts actually engage in this feature before we plan to do anything more with it. Obviously, it's been a frustrating feature, and I put the blame 100% on myself with respect to jousting. Came out too late. It was mistakenly built from the beginning. And I did not tweak it as our roadmap was changing. So that's certainly something that I own completely.
Man, all of a sudden the anonymous questions are flooding in. We have another one.
Good.
Some of our friends' farming points have been at 0 for a month. Wait, that's not really a question. Okay, so the anonymous person who messaged that, please message it again, but as a full question so we can answer you. Let's move to the next one. With the move to stat-based changes, can you add total stats, something like, ELO scores, so we can more easily choose coins for all the loops that need stats moving forward?
Total
Without it, we
stats
have to...
exists today. You go and it's the graph. It's literally the little graph icon, the bar graph icon inside of our build today. So if you go and you filter by that, you're automatically filtering by total stats. That's been in the build for several releases and is a great feature. I use it every day.
Gotcha. Okay, let's wait if they have a follow-up question on that. Okay, we have another question here, but also from Sirius. In previous town halls, you mentioned that users would have the choice to not participate in a Clash of Clans style uh, Shadow Corn attack. But now it seems that every team is forced to participate. What changed in the thinking process?
Read that question again. I want to make sure I understand it, please.
In a previous town hall, you mentioned that. Sorry. And I mean, okay, let me get a drink of water. In a previous town hall, you mentioned that participation in the Clash of Clans style event of Shadow Corn attack would not be necessary, but now it seems that everybody needs to participate in it. What changed in the thinking process?
Okay. So Twilight Tactics, when it launches, will obviously still be an opt-in event, so that did not change. What did change is applying making stats matter kind of across the board. Again, this is a change that I regret not making from the beginning of the game. By not having stats matter, we made land progression matter and the quantity of corns matter and the quality did not, outside of obviously the game of trying to get high tier mythics. And that just set up and created this massive economic imbalance that we see today, which is tens of thousands of babies that players are not incentivized to evolve. And this is, I think, where I come back to this idea of you've got to look at the entirety of the system when suggesting a specific change to any one underlying system. Everybody doesn't like the price of Unum today. The price of Unum is a result of a lack of demand for it because once players, well, again, we didn't, I don't know how many times I have to say it. There is more Unum needed than the current entirety of the circulating supply if we just got people to evolve or force people to evolve their current babies. With the launch of gyms, you can only burn an adult. No killing of children, babies here. So that's going to be this nice hump of if you want to burn a donkey, you got to at least evolve it in the first place. Everybody asks when more Unum syncs, when this, when that. Like these are all the things that, quite frankly, many of you have been asking for a very, very long time, and we're now layering them together. I think where I'm maximally frustrated with our community, setting aside all the individual people that like to poke at me in particular, just generally here. Many of you have been with us 2 years now. You've seen everything we've done, all the mistakes we've made, and how much we've improved. And I feel like time and time again, we go through a cycle of this emotionally charged roller coaster anytime that we're pushing forward on a change. Now, I've been saying for months that stats were going to matter. And um, the idea that I would codify everything into a thin white paper and we were just then going to take that as biblical level text that was never going to change is absurd. It just is. We are in a constant state of evolution and reacting to the macro market conditions, reacting to player behavior inside of our own game, and reacting to the data that we're seeing. And so it's a little frustrating to me to get the level of frustration that we're hearing right now. And when I asked for, well, how would you balance it in a way that considers all the variables we're considering, I can't get anyone to engage. Um, so, yes, I'm bringing some heat into this town hall because I'm definitely not happy with the pushback that we're receiving around a lot of these changes when I don't see a single person proposing an alternative that takes into account the complete picture. And I'd love for someone to have the courage to come up here and talk about this. Um, or write about it because these are important issues, and seeing the handful of people kind of um, expressing frustrations without bringing solutions 2 years into this is starting to fatigue me as a human being.
Fatigue from being alive, am I right, ladies? Okay, we have the truth. Oh, he is requesting to speak, coming up on the stage. Hello.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Town Hall Day. Uh, yeah,
Good time zone, sir.
yeah. Aaron, I agree with you there of the difficulty of future planning without taking everything into consideration. I think a lot of things within CU are great. I think there's definitely room for improvement, like there is in pretty much any aspect of any
Of course.
game. I think there have been mistakes made of kind of the outcry from the community, then trying to fix that one thing that everyone's outcrying about, and not thinking as much about the greater kind of ecosystem, which I mean is going to happen. And I would love to, maybe we have we have our council that votes on things and kind of has an idea about everything. But if there was, a overall game council that only did, maybe a weekly meeting to kind of think about the bigger picture and where things are going, I would, more than happy to. I'm great at playing the devil's advocate, so I'd be more than happy to try to come up with ideas, pick holes in those ideas, and think about the greater good or direction of CU. It's also hard from the community's perspective as well to not maybe know the inner workings and the overall 3, 6, 9 year plan of everything that the team already kind of knows. So for me, just thinking about the greater picture, it wraps my brain in kind of a mystery there of like, I would love to think about it and game plan and do these things, but without the kind of first insight from the team and from you about where we want to go, it seems a little bit hard to come up with solutions that are aligned with that plan. You know what I mean? Like we can shout all day of what we think the team wants and what we think would be good for the whole CU, but it's tough to not come up with ideas that don't really align with what you guys have without that master kind of plan from you guys to start. More than happy to jump on calls, jump on um, meetings, planning, things like that, write ups, whatever it is. If we have some kind of like here's our plan, here's our budget, go forth and make some cool plans and balancing and blah blah blah, so that in 6 months this is hopefully where we are, and blah blah blah. More than happy to try to do that, and would love to. And I think that's kind of fun for me, is to it's like a board game of where you see things going, how to strategize, things like that. So volunteering for that. Don't know how it would work out, how the planning goes, or what the team budget and allotment of team's time and stuff would be, but happy to do that if that's something you guys are open to.
In the past, I have considered, and we've discussed this separate council, almost like an economic council. We have a lot of changes to make to the existing council structure in the first place. So I'm not super bullish on that, based on how the some of the issues that we've run into with the current structure of the council. And quite frankly, we would need some qualifications for that, because so anyway, I struggle with that a little bit. 3-4 months ago, right, we presented a very detailed deck on Shadowforge. We've now presented Twilight Tactics. So I would counter a little bit of this idea that y'all do not know what's in front. I think we're doing a very good job of staying kind of months ahead of when we plan to release things, and are previewing that and are taking feedback on those things. One of the challenges with having more of a formal council is also this idea that, are we trying to keep that, like, are they going to keep the alpha to themselves? Do we do it open? Like, there's just, I don't know. I'm a little fatigued on some of this stuff based on the experience that we've had to date. It seems like every time we lean into transparency, it simply invites more nitpicking, more questions, more trolling around things, right? So what I will commit more to is the presentations and AMAs like Jeff and Andrew have been doing. Again, months in advance of release features. That is the opportunity to come in and treat those more like working sessions, and contribute ideas and feedback. Another thing I discussed with our social media manager actually yesterday is that we're not, I think, externally doing a good job at all of pitching the arc and the roadmap, right? Like, people are aware, if they're following us on socials, about Shadowforge and what it's about, the characters behind it, all that kind of stuff. And so, like, great, but we're not connecting the dots between this, Twilight Tactics, the gem works and the launch of tribes, and then what the Elder game looks like beyond that, what tribe v tribe PvP and stuff looks like. And so that's something that we're already working towards, and you're going to see more immediate change in the coming weeks specific to stuff like that.
Cool.
So I hope that answers your question. I'm very, very hesitant to create another council or something like that until we feel like we've got a better handle on the current one, our current governance process. I still have to move everything into this unincorporated nonprofit. Just wait to see Sirius when we, put down, here's the DAO charter, and we're now memorializing some of the edge cases around how we vote and how things are approved. And, here's the treasury going to this unincorporated nonprofit. And so anyway, good suggestions. And hopefully some of the stuff that we are immediately kind of doing and changes that we're making resonate with kind of what you were bringing up, the truth.
Cool. Yeah, I totally agree. There's no easy answer, and from my experience in the serious channels and whatnot, there's no easy way to deal with all the feedback that you get from being open about everything. It seems like there's no winners, whatever you guys are trying to do. But I agree maybe that the inner council of the team might be a good medium ground of, like, hey, release kind of those plans that you're thinking about, and give insight into what the idea behind it is. I think that's kind of gone over maybe a little bit better than just here's what we're doing, but the thinking behind it, and keep that internal to the team so that, the community team is not getting the alpha, blah, 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 as well as, hopefully not all of the FUD and the complaining and whatnot goes along with that. But I'm trying to fight as much FUD as I can with in the series so that keep things light. But cool, looking forward to it. Do you have any dates?
That might be a losing battle. I wouldn't take on the brain damage. I feel bad about our CM team members having to deal with it on a daily basis at this point.
Yeah.
Keep your mental health top of mind, sir.
Yeah.
You can tell mine's a little worn today. But thank you for coming up the truth.
Sure.
I appreciate it as always.
Yeah, one more thing about, is there a timeline on the partner announcement of who it is?
Yes. Not an exact timeline. I mean, let's see how much is left in that wallet. Refresh, $46,000. So when they complete their purchases, that will be sometime next week. I am trying to align with them on announcing the following week. So the second week in October is the timing on that. I'm trying to plan a series of tweets. We're going to do a giveaway inside of their community, like these kind of things. And so they're a little slow to move, but we've already been in touch and on the same page and approved the social videos and things that we're going to be putting out in partnership with them. And so, second week in October is the current timing on that front, assuming we don't have anything crazy happen, like another balancer issue or whatever, because they did pause purchases during that. I think the buy's in sometime next week, and then the following week we'll be kind of rolling out the announcement and kind of going from there, doing some AMAs and stuff.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Truth.
All right, thank you so much for dropping by, The Truth. So, Vic, that also answers your question about what about the partnership reveal? Yes, today is indeed 28th September. You know what comes after? It will be October, and I'm pretty sure y'all will get your reveal on October. So look forward to that. Okay, next up we have Lightman. Oh, I believe this is Lightman zeroing in on one of those. The question about the total stats. Can we show total stats on the unicorn selection screen as we do with ELO? Because it might help us to embrace the move to stats, but we need to see the stats easily.
Yes, so no, this is not coming today, but this will launch with Tribes, which we're calling our 3.0 release. That's the next release after the next major release after 2.4, which is shipping today. So with 3.0, we are updating things like inventory. So we have sub tabs so that that's a lot easier to navigate. And we are updating the visuals around your unicorns, their profile pics, to indicate things like mythic status, total stats. So exactly what's kind of asked here, gem slots and things of that nature. So just trying to upgrade the UI to surface these relevant details with that release, the 3.0 release. So that is absolutely on the docket. That design is already approved and is in the process of being handed off to engineering for implementation.
All right. DR has a follow-up about his question earlier. So his question was not a complaint about extraction levels dropping or about automation. It's just that there are players that play just for clout. Relatable. I was one of those players in Web 2 games, and I spent a ton on idle heroes, and I was in the top 3 of my server. Ooh, congrats. I didn't have any expectation to get my money back or make a profit. I just hooked and wanted to dominate. All I'm saying is that we're missing out if we don't provide an infrastructure for such players to spend.
someone who comes in, so it's very interesting. In free to play, which clearly you were a spender in free to play. Thank you for your service funding that industry that my team and I worked in for so many years. In free to play, what happens is if you start, let's just use Clash of Clans as an example. 5 years ago in Clash of Clans, if you're buying a bundle, you're getting less for your dollar than you would be today. So they inflate their economies over time. It's really the only way that a new player coming into that experience has any hope of catching up over time. It's not great, and it leads to churn at the highest level of spend because over time those players get frustrated. Now, the trick, the scheme is, of course, if you continue to spend over the course of those 5 years, your dollar is basically going further over time. It's getting you access to more assets and materials over time. But if you hit a point where you stop, right, you're usually these economies kind of collapse over time, right? And you see this more in Forex strategy where the LTV is even higher. So you have to look at the difference between kind of how we have to structure a game versus a free-to-play game. Because free-to-play, you can spend millions of dollars and your assets just stay in your account. And unless you find a way to transfer your account to someone else, like there's no ability to ever really sell those assets. There's certainly no peer-to-peer trading inside of these games, right? So they're not worried about inflating the economy over time. On the opposite side of that, a new player coming in, like if they're buying at the floor, they're starting, not in a good spot, right? But if they're buying high stat corns, leveled up land and things, they've effectively purchased progress from players who were here before. One of the most frustrating things that I've seen, especially amongst many of our OGs, is they forget the fact that because they were here at the beginning, they actually got RIP gathering carts from the first 4 or 5 months, right? I mean, I know people remember that. And yes, we've had to tighten that economy over time because in this world, y'all have the ability to trade with each other. You can take the Unum out of the game and sell it and transfer it. Obviously, the RMP allows you to transfer and trade a lot of the lower tier items within the game itself, right? And so I guess I'm making the point that like part of the design and difference in these systems is someone who wants to come in and spend buys progression from other players, right? I think shout out to Dipbeak, who I think is here. I've won some great jousts off the back of corns I purchased from Dipbeak, right? And he put in all the work to go and breed those. I didn't put the work in. Unfortunately, I have to run this company and check out Sirius every day. So I just don't have the time to do that level of, insane breeding. But other players do. And I was more than happy to purchase that progress. That's why I'm giving Time Traveler so much shit about this, is I'm like, there's this expectation some players just have where it's like, I want to be able to progress without needing to spend it all. And part of this is like, fine, I'm not asking you to take dollars outside of the economy and putting them into our game. I understand how much you've already spent back in the tail end of the bull, and let's not even get into that. What we're arguing about is you waiting for one energy unit to refill to then plant the next day. But something about that is just so you don't want to do that. So then the only other alternative is to go buy cheap berries on the market itself. So back to this question around where to spend. Part of the spend is buying progression from other players and spending in that fashion, which is really strange because it means the vast majority of the value is flowing between players, and we're kind of taking the tax and the treasury at the 2.5% of the secondary of the RMP fee of these kind of things, right? So it's very different from free to play, and I would make the case that there are avenues to spend and advance your progression within the game. They're just different than us, the developer, coming in and selling that progression to you. Now, with things like farming and stuff, I mean, I am getting tired of fielding the emotion and frustration that players have around this experience. And so it's going to be interesting to look at, well, do we start adding further progression to farms that does have some automation to it past level 10? Like, do we just forget about LOD1 completely and just move into what many people want, which is a more automated environment? But you have to understand an infinite progression farm sim is never going to be sustainable. So the transition over into the build battle stuff is very, very important. And I would say, like, the tribe PvP and being at the top of the tribe leaderboard, being able to steal things from other tribes, like, that's where I think the players who want to come in, who want to dominate, who want to win, are going to really start to enjoy things. And that's where the system itself gets layered in a way that starts to fall into place. One of my biggest regrets and thoughts just generally is just, should we have just waited until we had all these systems in place? I've had players tell us, like, thank you for actually shipping so we had something to play. We've obviously had other players who've poked at every decision we've made along the way. And I oftentimes think, would it have been better to just wait and get all of these systems in place and finally release, like many of our competitors? And I just don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I hope people value that we shipped product and that we've been progressing towards the vision of it for nearly 2 years now. So anyway, that's a good question. I don't know if there's any follow-ups on that stuff.
All right, we have an anonymous question asking about your thoughts on a tractor feature related to that system.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about with respect to the automation. I think it's a little bit of an alpha leak, but farms are actually going to have visual differentiation today with this release. And they're kind of moving in a direction where, it would be possible. I think my struggle there is, like, the seed input side of things when we move to automation. Like, do we just set it up where it starts sinking seeds out of inventory until you make a change? And so there's some stuff to kind of think through on that front. And if we're really going to go that route, I'm almost starting to think, we just remove LOD1, start to give people more passive ways to do that. But again, I want to solidify the Tribes Elder game, the PvP aspects of this, the build battle aspects of this. And that's the thing. Like, people come in and suggest XYZ change, feature, piece, and it's just irrelevant if we don't find a way to create balance inside of this economy. Unicorn deflation with inflation, fungible token sinks tied to challenging other players in PvP and being successful in that regard. And so it's just another perfect example of someone is hyper focused on a very specific thing and request and not looking at the greater picture and not thinking about the resource trade-offs and the decisions that I've got to make constantly around where to deploy the team. And I'll make this statement very clear. I will always favor a feature that brings economic balance to the system over any individual singular UX enhancement. And if that just is something you do not like, I invite you to go find a team that is a little bit more focused on user experience than we are. This is part of my core thesis, is I think the vast majority of the games that haven't shipped yet won't. The very few that do will fail because their design team will be incapable of managing the economies behind those games. We're getting the full load of Aron philosophy today.
Yeah, it's getting very deep. How much extra time do you have? We do have 2 other people who have stepped up, who want to step up on the stage. Wondering if you
If
have
they're
enough
stepping
time.
up on the stage, let's do it.
All right, you heard him, chat. Okay, so now we have Goliath Rules and Kaiser. So I will invite Goliath Rules to the stage first. Come on over, say hi. Hey.
Hey, how you doing? I heard the whole philosophy in that. To be honest with you, I'm in agreement with it, honestly. So I can't, obviously, for folks that don't know, I came into the game later in the cycle and that. So about what, 5 months ago. So I've bought into progress. I bought into the game. I bought into components of it, and yeah, of course, I bought in when things are down. But I mean, that's kind of where everything is right now with the NFT market, with games, stuff like that. We're in a cycle, and we're hoping that everything kind of moves its way up. I mean, I've had my challenges in other projects, but I'm really looking forward to where this is going. I'm really looking forward to kind of how things are progressing. And honestly, with the release that I saw and all of the features in that, I think it's going to be super awesome with what we got going on with this release. And I'm really, really excited about it. So I own both sides. I mean, I own the farm side and I own the Shadow Corn side. I think one of the things that, Aaron, that you've talked about was iterative releases and that. And I actually do IT project management. I do agile releases and that with my systems. And delivering components as they come along, delivering progress as it comes, is something that I definitely think is good. And I think that if you had waited for everything to get released, the amount of FUD would have just gotten like unbearable. And yeah, of course, people are going to be unhappy as you go along, but in the end, this is a journey, right? And I think we're going to get there, but I think you've delivered some really good components along the way. But yeah, I mean, if we had waited until like a year out or a year and a half out, and everybody was just still back on the farm thing and there was nothing along the way, I mean, you just imagine the amount of frustration you'd have at that level. And I think that you've done a good job to balance it out in my mind, kind of getting components out in that. And that I have to say, I have to applaud the team for that. So I think one of the things I agree with you. Another thing too is that I'm not a big fan of the automation piece in that, because there's a lot of folks that basically are out there like, I want massive amounts of RBW coming into my wallet with very little to do. And that's just not reality in the end. I mean, you can't have a game system where you do nothing and you just suck money off the system, and then it's not a game anymore at that point. It's just, But one of the things I will say is that, here's my question, I guess, in the end with all of my Wawa, or, basically output. The question that I have is, have you looked at like games like Stardew Valley and stuff like that, and maybe taken a look at some of the components of that type of game with like regards to maybe sprinklers or something like that? You still have to interact, but there's sort of like you can build a component that allows you to have a little bit more output, but you have to put the effort into actually getting that component, and that component has like a limited life expectancy, and then you have to build a new one. So that's one question I have.
Yeah, this is kind of when I was discussing earlier around we have been thinking about ideas for expanding the levels beyond 10, right? And potentially going as high as 15 or 18 or something. And when those conversations come up internally, a lot of it is based around, well, we probably need, beyond just further output in these things, that we need something that really makes that progression worth it. And so whether it's this kind of somewhat nebulous tractor idea, or just adding more functionality to those, to farming, to things like farming and gathering, that is definitely in line with how we're thinking about further expanding land gameplay progression. But I think that becomes, that's only something we're going to focus on post the release of Tribes.
Yeah, I agree. I think you got to get the other components out so that we see the whole story, and then you can kind of go from there. Because if you do anything before then, you're just you're making a decision on the fly without the output to be included in. And I think that's important. I guess the other question that I have is, so I sort of like got to a point on my upgrades I got 16 lands. I got 2 mythics in the middle. I got the mythics, though I focused on the workshops because the workshops being to level 10, there's a motivation for me there. But I gotta say that, like, with everything else, I'm not sure why I would upgrade the other things. And I guess in the end, is there some thought about maybe some type of like motivation on those buildings to get those things up? I mean, I have the farms up to like 9 because I have to, and the output's good on those. But like the nursery and even the gathering cart, I know that we had to really back off of Unum, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess I don't have a real big motivation right now to upgrade my gathering carts anymore because the Unum output is so low, and I understand why it is. But maybe there's something like in the gathering carts, maybe you can get, you know, one of the upgraded components on a more frequent basis or something like that. It's sort of like a candy that gets dropped in.
Yeah, I mean, in current tuning, right, it's glow lanterns, right, which feed the quest board, and you can go, okay, all these common and rare quests really low Unum, right, but if you have high level quest boards, right, you've got that potential mythic quest drop, which I recently got a couple of, powered through those, got lucky on them not failing. And, you know, that was a big win relative to gathering. And I think this is the thing everybody has to understand is the system has to evolve with the current state of the economy and everything. And we are in a state where just dumping more Unum everywhere constantly is obviously going to lead to continued price depreciation of that asset on the open market and just this continued flood of it, right? So hearing that some days I don't even gather until I'm like, shit, I'm starting to get low on seeds, or I just need to get that 7 to maybe 10K Unum that I get across my lands when I gather.
That's
right.
Exactly,
and that's by design. I don't look at that as a failure of the design and go, oh my God, I don't, it's like, no, great. I'm going to take, in particular, now I've got this funny thing. Today, a couple of my double mythics, I'm going to go, shit, do I want to kind of throw these at the farm in a seed bag and get this big bonus and go that route, or do I want to try a gather pull today? And those trade-offs and choices are by design and very natural there. So ideas around gathering carts, dropping special items and things is a direction like that lead to quests is a direction we'll continue to iterate on. And then you have to understand with gyms and tribes, now there's a lot more items that are going to be useful and valuable to the player base when those features launch. And now Gathering Cart is another system that we can go and look back at and say, all right, we can actually tweak this now that we have this entirely new subset of things to kind of grind for. And of course, I'm saying things completely outside of what the design team is talking about. So maybe they have slightly different plans, but it gives you an idea of like every system needs a tweak. It's like, hey, if you're really... Anyway, I won't belabor the babies farming anymore.
No, I think that's good. The other one thing I was going to say is that the one thing I will say in this, and then I'll hand it off to Kaiser, is if you're not doing quests, you're basically just not playing the game. Because I got to be honest with you, the one thing you just did say, if you're just throwing stuff at the gathering cart, then you're really not playing the depth of the game that's there. Because you're exactly right. I take the time to say, well, do I want to throw all of my unicorns on the gathering carts and just suck up all of my skill points on that? Or do I want to try to run some of these, mythic quests or basically the rare quests and try to basically do the gamble on whether I can get the RBW and the components out of that? And I find that enjoyable personally. I think it's kind of like, I like, the risk it for the biscuit thing, and I'm running quests that are at 75% or maybe 80%. And I posted the other day on Twitter that, or X, that basically, they Shadowcorns took my stuff, and I was running a quest where I was going for 350 RBW and I lost on it. But hey, what are you gonna do? So, Anyway, so I'll pause
Well,
and I'll hand it
starting today, the RBW pool begins to build for the shadow corns as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
so that will begin to benefit holders on, kind of both sides for sure.
All right, well, let me hand it off to Kaiser and let him take some time to talk.
Thanks,
so
Glass.
thanks for
I appreciate it.
Yep.
While Kaiser steps up, I saw this question from Wasper, and it's a good one to answer. Like, yes, we have only experienced to date since launching May 5th of 2022 this brutal bear market, right? And thus we have had to, like any real economy, implement tightening measures to try to keep inflation under control. And I'm just laughing because it is kind of funny that we face some of the same challenges our own global economy faces today. So we've only really experienced that. And I have said this before, and it's very true. And so thank you for asking the question, Wasper. Like, on the flip side of this, in a world where we are seeing growth inside of the economy and significant numbers of new players entering, we would open the source taps again. Like, that's exactly how it would work. That is when you want to do things like that and create more carrots inside of the economy for, in particular, new and old players alike. And anyone who's stuck it out and survived inside of this community and dealing with me and things is like gonna be there for that moment. So it is, we have just really only seen one side of it. Right. And there is an opposite side of this where we would retune things. We are constantly moving the meta and making changes and tweaking and retuning things. And in basically the opposite of what we've seen in economic expansion, we would be, obviously moving in the opposite direction. So it is not a one-way street, Wasper, in that these nerfs are not like a permanent thing, and we would make changes on the other side of this, that would obviously be different than what we've currently seen. Good question to ask. Let's get Kaiser up here.
All right, it's Kaiser's moment. Come on over, please.
Good time zone. Ooh,
Good time
Good
zone.
time zone, sir.
Ooh.
Hello. Okay, I have just 3 questions. I'm gonna do my best to make it quick. I think just want a side comment about the farm plot issue or the questions and concerns. I think the reason why a lot of people are jumping on the farm plots is because it's running. If there's no unicorn, it's like 50%. If maybe we can set it, just maybe, we can set it like 60 to 65%. I think it will make that much of a better deal. Just until like maybe until we got the stats UI fixed, until we got that, then that's the time that maybe we can put it back to 50%. At least users can see the numbers of what they can do, and by this time that they have 65%, they still have a few more maybe weeks or days to adjust to that farm concerns, and I think it should be good. Yeah, well, basically that's actually my question. Is there still any way for us to like change this maybe temporarily to 60 to 65% for now, and then when the tribes came up and then we already see the stats on what we can do, then that's the time we put it back to 50%. Is that possible?
Not today for 2.4, as we've already QA'd all of that tuning. We likely have a hot fix release planned next week, and so we'll observe behavior and let these changes settle in with the community, and then, as always, kind of reevaluate at that point.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you with the syncing process because I'm also seeing the balance in the data warehouse. Yes, the seeds, grass seeds, and the plain seeds, and the berries. They're quite a lot, and as we all know, our farm plots are getting a lot of these bonuses, and some of them actually stack them for a year. I, for one, personally have one of the highest bear bonus, so it's easier for us to
Oh, yeah,
find a
we
way
know.
to really sync on it. So,
But a lot of
also that,
re-rolls. I mean, you spent a lot of time re-rolling those damn bonuses and sunk an
yeah.
enormous amount of, resources
Mm.
into that. So props to you, sir.
Yeah, and I think it's also I think the reason behind this is really for the economy to like reduce those seeds, and I think it's okay. It's just that I think the community is shocked with the 50%. Why is it 50%? And some people are just a bit surprised about this, so that's why there were concerns. But anyway, moving on. The second one is that okay, because bumper corns, as you know, we are at least my friends or at least my team, they have been playing a lot. So I was wondering what's going to happen to it after this event, after these clans. And I really didn't know what's going on now with the unicorn party, the mob run, and the other things. So
Mhm.
uh, maybe you can share some stuff on that one too.
Yeah, so the quick TLDR there is Bumper Corns will continue in its current state until the relaunch of Bumper Corns and Mob Run in the um, Apple and Google Play stores. That's happening in November. So when that relaunch occurs, you'll go to the app stores to download and play those games. So the WebGL version will get sunset briefly. Then in December, we have unicornparty.com launching both web APK because Google Play does not allow real money skill-based games and the Apple App Store. So we'll have a simultaneous launch in December of the web portal, submission to the App Store, and sideload APK. That will be for Unicorn Bingo, which is the first new game coming into the suite. And then in the new year, you're going to see Mob Run and Bumper Corns get relaunched into that portal. If you've already downloaded the mobile apps, you won't have to download a separate SKU. You'll just update that app and it will suddenly have the hard currency purchase and all of this kind of stuff. So any questions on that? But that's kind of the TLDR. If you want the specifics, Team Surf is being held to what they put forward and what was approved in the forum proposal, and they got into kind of the nitty gritty on the timeline there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, my last one is that I'm pretty sure I might have asked this last year or a few years back. We're already adding gems right now, so are we still looking into? I'm still thinking of other ways for us to sync items, and I know the art team is not going to be happy with this. Limited edition land NFTs that you can put on your land to decorate your land. Skins. I know gems actually adds you stats, but like costumes, like maybe some wearables that they can use as a headgear and stuff like that. It will be like limited edition items that they can add on their unicorns. It may not show on their NFT as on the like outside from OpenSea and Haku, but maybe they can see it in game, like when they're doing jousting or they're doing something else. So I would like to know what are your thoughts about it, or if there's anything that we're still going to do about those things.
I guess a couple of points. So with the launch of tribes, you will be able to kind of select a visual representation for your set of land plots in tribe space in what we call LOD3. So up above your LOD2, which is what you initially see before you go into LOD1 to move buildings around and run your operation. So that will introduce kind of the first, I would say, true customization element that we've had. Obviously, the tribe space itself, the tribe town hall and things, is going to be a building that gets progressed. And as we add things like watchtowers and totems, it'll kind of give, and depending on what you care about as a tribe and how you're being strategic as a tribe relative to others, like that's going to add some nice, I think, visual differentiation, especially when you combine everybody selecting this little representation of their set of land plots inside of the tribe, and then the number of land plots you have, like there's different sizings and stuff. And so that'll be the first time we introduce the customization. I want to see the one of ones ship, and we're currently integrating and finalizing that functionality. Obviously, no one's one of one will be the first to come out. And then you're going to start to see a lot more one-of-ones offered up as prizes and rewards across various leaderboards and tournaments and things of that nature. And so that's the plan for customization. The idea of putting a skin on a unicorn that's already a Mr. Potato Head and very unique in its own right, especially if you have high tier mythics and things like that, they just look awesome, right? And so to me, that's a mismatch of saying, well, let's put a skin on that unicorn versus the one-of-ones, right? Where there's just these literal unique one-of-ones. We're literally giving Noen a stat number and he can apply the stats. So we're making these very special, something that you get to kind of commit and contribute to. They get minted, and then obviously, you know, you're they'll be useful within the core game. So I'm excited to see how those things go, and then we can start to look at is additional land customization something that we want to get into. So hopefully, Kaiser, that kind of helps you understand what's at least on the roadmap as far as customization goes, and then post shipping those things and seeing the community response from that, we can kind of look at what we can do in the future.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good. Looking forward to it. What I'm understanding right now is that we're just still in the first phase of that process, and if in the future we can, then we will. So really excited for that. And again, thank you so much. That's all my questions. And thanks.
Thanks, Kaiser.
Thank you so much, Kaiser. Ooh, ooh. Okay, so before we end the town hall, we do have one more question from the community. Lemonade was wondering, what about Haku? What's the plan around that? So, as you're all probably aware, Haku will be ending operations around the next couple of months, pending a miracle. And I'm pretty sure Lemonade is referring to that time you vague posted around in Sirius that we had some plans. TM. Would you like to share those plans, TM, Aaron, or are we just not ready yet?
I mean, Haku is sunsetting on November 10th, so that is a certainty that is happening. We have spoken with that team. Based on the stack of that tech and how they built it, it's not a good fit for us relative to the cost that they want for that. And so, you know, we've declined to make a purchase of it. I'm pretty convinced that the only path forward is going to be a custom marketplace for us at this point. And we do have a number of conversations going. There's a route where we skin the front end and leverage something like Reservoir. For the back end, there's a path where we just leverage Seaport ourselves as a back end. The beauty of Reservoir is we could have a custom marketplace, but also bring in OpenSea listings if people are still wanting to list there or continue to list there. So there's a number of options on that front. Obviously, we're about to integrate the Sequence wallet. That team has Nifty Swap, and they are also offering a kind of white label custom marketplace. So I would say there's a lot of options that we're currently evaluating. The web team needs to finish Twilight Tactics, and then I'm kind of putting assuming we build the front end and don't use a white label marketplace, it'll be the next thing on their priority list. Going forward, I think a custom marketplace is absolutely a must. The lesson learned with Haku for everyone here is when you build on top of other startups fail at a very high rate. So we experienced that. Hopefully it's a lesson learned for everybody there. And now that, you know, I think relying completely on OpenSea is a disaster and not something that I intend to take risk on. So whether it's a white label marketplace through a partner like Sequence, the Horizon Labs team, or, you know, taking and skinning our own front end on top of Reservoir, or just literally on top of the open source smart contracts like Seaport, that's all being discussed right now. And as we solidify plans, we'll notify everyone. It's very unlikely we're going to have anything done exactly on November 10th. So I need to figure that out a little bit and decide if we want to do a migration back to OpenSea event, which seems really silly. I think I'm inclined to just kind of let things lay until we're ready for our launch and, ultimately build another kind of migration and incentive plan around that. The massive advantage there obviously is just going to be our own UI. So we know what stats and things are relevant, what filters matter to people, coupled with the ability to obviously eliminate someone else taking a fee. I would look at not doing the full 5%. I think we just make it 4 or 3 or something like that, knowing that all of that will flow into the treasury and kind of move on from there. And looking out to future projects and things, again, a custom marketplace is a must. So building this once from Laguna's perspective is going to give us the potential to leverage it across projects in the future. So we do have a plan on that front. More details to follow as we get implementation details solidified. Great question.
All right. We do have a follow-up question for that. I think that a major reason why people like Haku so much is that they were able to filter their unicorns for farming or other uses, and they were able to make use of those filters. So with that in mind, do we also have the same priority towards that kind of filtering if we do get a custom marketplace? And how do you feel about implementing, let's say, requests for filters in a marketplace level if it's not immediately doable by the team?
Filters will be and is a requirement in the product spec. So I agree completely. We know why people preferred Haku, and if we go the route of skinning our own custom marketplace, at minimum we'll have that filter functionality. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I used it a bunch. I liked it. It's sure as shit a lot better than OpenSea, and so that will be a requirement. In conversations with the Horizon Labs team on their white label marketplace, I made this point of go to Haku and tell me whether or not you can do that. And they at least claimed that they could. So yeah, across the board, regardless of the path that we pick, having at least the level of filtering that Haku has is a requirement. So completely in agreement with whoever asked that question.
That was me, by the way.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
Okay, that is our town hall number 46. Any questions in the thread? If you have any, we will answer them later. We'll see you next time for the bi-weekly town hall number 47 with members of the internal team. We'll post a recording of this on our socials if you would like to give it a re-listen. And don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow Unicorn fam who couldn't make it. If you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out on our support channels, the Mod Support channel and the Ask the Devs channel. Again, this has been Sparkly Unicorn with Stealthy on Tech, hosting co-founder and CEO Aron. Good morning, good night, and see you in Game Unicorn fam. Uwu?
Woo.
That's one for the books. An uwu straight out of his soul. This